Hey, how's everyone doing tonight? This is the Nerds MC podcast. This is the C in the name, Robert Cox, joined by Cody Moss. Cody, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Cody, and I'm also a fellow nerd that has been roped into this podcast.
Roped in. It's not that bad. Come on. You came up with the idea too. Clearly you had some interest.
Yeah, this is true.
All right. So today we're going to be covering a couple of subjects, one of which is salvaging old technology and using it in the modern day. So that's more or less going to cover things around like old computers, dealing with like old PCBs, repurposing stuff, and just kind of seeing where we can reduce e-waste and more importantly get like more value out of the stuff we buy. And then another subject we have is like remote work and its place in the future. So that's something that's interesting to me. Hopefully, it's interesting to everyone else out there. But Cody, you want to kick us off with dealer's choice on which one you're interested in?
Yeah, we could go ahead and start with the salvaging the old tech because I feel like that's gonna probably be a pretty big topic, especially with today, with like how e-waste is going.
That's fair. All right, man. I mean, one thing that comes to mind for me with that is like just like the proliferation of constantly buying new shit. It's like, why do we need new cell phones all the time? Why the fuck do we need new laptops all the time? I don't understand it. And I feel like to a degree we're both bad at this, but like there's like a desire to keep up with the Joneses almost around what exactly you're like using, which makes no sense. Like logically, I could still use my iPhone 12 and be perfectly fine, but at the end of the day, upgraded for reasons I don't understand, to be honest. I mean, do you have any situations to where like you've recently bought something you honestly didn't need and then produced a metric fuck ton of garbage because of it?
Yeah, well, what's funny is, so my wife and I we recently just bought a used Tesla, so we were trying to eliminate some e-waste, but I also realized that by buying even a used Tesla, there's going to be some point in time in the future where this whole car is going to be in a dump somewhere,
Yeah.
like battery and all. Or, well, I think we call them junkyards, but
It's a dump.
still, it eventually it's going to end up there, and there's not much I can do about it. Like, I wish there was other ways, but I know that eventually this car, when it dies, and like I can't find a mechanic to fix it because when they can't find parts or something else, eh, it's gonna suck when it happens. I wish there was ways around it, like maybe more standardization or other parts of it. But kind of going back to what you were saying is, um, it was something that we definitely didn't need. It was more of a want because I already still had like my Jeep and stuff, so didn't necessarily need it, but it's nice to have two cars because like then my wife and I can both be in different places at the same time in this hot ass Las Vegas weather. During the winter, I could usually just ride my motorcycle, but not during the summer.
What do you mean? It's only 105 right now. It is.
Oh, if we are just starting the summer.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to the heat of August. I get the feeling it's going to be intense this year.
Yeah, I think so too. But so that's why we were like, we need two cars so that we could be at two places at the same
Yeah.
time. And but again, this is probably like the most technological thing, and it has a giant battery, and we both know like batteries. At least the last time I checked, I could be wrong, but I don't think there's a way to recycle them or like even kind of repair just the bad cells like in our current process. I'm sure there could be a way to at least repair bad cells and keep most of the battery pack out of the landfill, but like the individual cells themselves, when those go bad, I think it's just one of those things that is just like no matter what, it's going to end up in the e-waste. maybe someday in the future somebody will dream up a way of recycling those.
Yeah. I think like we're not going to recycle lithium ion like we have it today because basically what you do with that is you extract the raw material that was used, but to a certain degree as it's burnt in the bad cells like you pointed out, there's no recovering that. It's just gone. What I think is more interesting
It's been used.
is like maximizing the use of these things. So like you buying a used car. I did the same thing when I bought my Leaf. Obviously there's a magnitude of scale there in regards to practical application. Like your car is going to last way longer than mine just due to the fact that the battery's fucking bigger. But still, recycling old shit is like a good way to kind of reduce impact. What I find interesting is ultimately at the end of the day, I guess asked another way, at what point do we run out? Because technology for the most part is like using rare earth metals. So like all of this stuff we have, PCBs, batteries, chips, it's all based on rare earth metals. So that's like gold, silver, platinum, palladium, dealing with lithium, cobalt back in the day prior to that being removed from the manufacturing process of batteries. Like all of this stuff and its impact on the world is massive, especially when you begin to look in like South Africa and what they do for cobalt mines for people that still use that material. It's freaking, it's awful to be honest. Like the impact it has on communities in the world is awful, but there's not a whole heck of a lot we can really do about it, especially whenever you look into like Western society as a whole. Like we depend on this stuff, and some could argue that's bad,
true.
but what are you going to do about it? We do. Like modern life as we know it depends on it.
Yeah, it's especially here in the States. I can't speak for other places in the world, one, because I haven't really lived there. I've only ever visited. And I could definitely say that it's just like, it's one of those things where, like San Francisco, like last time I was there, I think like maybe not San Francisco exactly, but like the suburbs around it. Like they have like where there's like bike lanes that are in middle, like protected by medians and stuff like that. I think stuff like that can help reduce some of this. But again, it's just with how vast distance we travel, especially here in the States, like cars are just kind of always going to be a necessity, especially with how we've built out our infrastructure. Unless we start like knocking down cities and replanning them, we're never going to get rid of the car.
Yeah.
And, like the thing is like we have, oil burning cars or, well, gasoline. And it's just one of those things, right? Where EV seems better. I'm not 100% certain if it is better. I've heard on the internet that it's basically like a trade-off for different problems. It's not exactly green, but it's also maybe better. So maybe going towards more technological cars is better for the environment, but I can't say because I'm not an expert.
I think it almost needs to go into like again, like let's like hone in on this on cars specifically because that is interesting. The problem is not necessarily that EVs are worse or better for the environment. Like whenever you like look at the harvesting of the raw material, it's all bad. Like producing goods is bad, like objectively, because we're using things. What I think becomes interesting, and I think it speaks a lot to like the modern consumer and where we've kind of placed priorities as a society, is like you need a battery driven car, which is better than gas, but then in that same vein you're loading it with like computers and other stuff, other shit that it may not need. And that I think is where it becomes interesting. At what point, for the sake of the planet, do we begin to sacrifice quality of life? And like as Americans, I can tell you the answer is probably never. Like I cannot think of a single person who was willing to compromise something to like solve an intangible that they realistically don't make an impact on. Because at the end of the day, regardless of whether or not you believe or don't believe in climate change, whether or not it's man-made, the individual consumer is not who's doing it. It's like the businesses that produce these things for us. Like, we don't really have control.
Yeah, we definitely don't. Well, correction, we kind of do because you can kind of vote with your wallet. But the problem is none of the companies out there, like I can't think of one that's like we're doing things 100% right and ethical. I mean, like not to throw all companies under the bus. Like I'm sure there might be one out there or two out there that are doing their best or their damnedest, but at the end of the day, if you need the resources, you need the resources. I'm just wondering if, like, you know, because you have SpaceX and also Blue Origin and a bunch of other private base space companies coming out now. I'm wondering how long before it's more sustainable for them to go get these materials from, like, let's say asteroids than it is from our own Earth. And the question is, do we hit a timeline where we still have an Earth by that time?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that begs the question, like, who do you trust to kind of steward the future of humanity? Like, do you trust corporations to do it? Do you trust government to do it? I'm not sure either of those entities truly has humanity's best interest at heart. I just don't trust it.
No. They definitely don't, but it's because the problem is they aren't thinking of. So corporations, right? They will only ever do what's best for them.
Money.
Because
money,
that's just
money,
kind of
money,
like
money.
how well, money is like their primary resource, and that's why they try to get it. If something else were to come up where it was like, well, actually now we're trading in metals, well, they're gonna find out how to like transfer all that money into now metal. Because corporations at the end of the day are there to, yes, make money, but it's to serve their own self-interest, right? Like, it's how do we get the self-interest to overline with the interests of keeping our planet or resources from being just absolutely absorbed?
Yeah.
And I don't know if we'll ever reach that. And then governments, they're just an extension of a corporation, because like they're just a corporation that kind of like builds out our infrastructure and approves things and regulates other corporations. But at the end of the day, they are just an organization, just like Microsoft is, or others, Apple, other FANG companies,
Yeah.
whatnot.
Well, in our world, they are. Yeah, you're right. Fun fact that you brought up metals. Guess what's the price of silver is?
I'm really behind on this. Like maybe $300 something an ounce.
Oh,
no, it's probably more than
fuck
that.
no, dude.
Way
Silver's
more than
$30.
that. Really?
Yeah, 30 an ounce. Guess what it was?
Oh, okay. 20 an ounce.
When I started buying it back before COVID, it was 18-ish. Over the last year, the price has gone from $22 upwards of over 30 at times. So it's legitimately seen like almost a 50% swing.
Okay, so we gotta pause this for a moment. I gotta run to the bank because I'm gonna be draining my savings account.
Yeah.
Because that sounds better than inflation.
I mean, a 50% swing, I'll take it. That's where I've been putting my cash.
Right.
And like gold. Guess what gold's up to?
I'm probably gonna be terribly wrong. $40 an ounce.
Dude, gold is like $2,400 right now.
Oh, okay. See, this is how much I know about metals. Is nothing.
I can tell. Yeah, no.
Yeah. I usually go to a jewelry store and I go, "That's a nice ring," and then they go, "This is the price," and I go, "Not that nice."
Fair. And I mean, you and I have talked a bunch. I've been like a metal investor for a while now. It is not going to make you rich, but you'll never be poor. And that's kind of how I look at it.
Yeah,
But yeah, all that is to
yeah,
say,
I could definitely say that.
the whole fucking reason I brought up silver is that entire set of growth is driven by two things: inflation and industrial use. There's a lot of stuff getting produced that requires silver, and even more of it is being produced even though the price is going up. So like people are buying it, like things just like circuit boards, cars. I mean, literally at this point, I can't think of something that doesn't use silver either directly or indirectly in its manufacturing process, and people are just buying it in droves. What I will find interesting is as things begin to swing down, does that trend continue? Do people start to put a little more weight into making things they have today last a little longer? I don't know.
Well, yeah. Uh, well, so this might not line up with what you've seen, but actually, no. Who am I kidding? We both have seen this, but it's like, especially as smartphones, like they keep trying to like sell us these new phones, and at first, back when like I was in college, and even as a young adult who like had his first disposable income job, like I was buying a new phone every year.
Oh yeah.
And it's because like I always wanted the new features, like and all this other stuff. And you know, the best part was is usually the cell phone providers would give you like zero APR, just hey, it's tacked onto your bill. So like I didn't even think about it. I was just like, "Oh, hey, it's time to upgrade it to a new phone." But now it's like I look at these things and I look at like the operating system changes, and like the problem is like, or it's not a problem. I shouldn't say that because companies are going to try to make it a problem because they want to sell more phones. It's not a problem. It's just one of those things that happens. Is like now the features are kind of like stagnating, and like they're spending more time like supporting the older phones. And it's like, so like my iPhone 13. I bought it when 13s were just going out. Like the 14 had just been announced. And that's when I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to go buy the 13. It's going to have a decent lifetime. Because I was like, I'm just kind of at this point, I'm tired of buying new phones every year. Like my last phone, the Pixel 4a 5G, that was supposed to be my 5-year phone. But the problem is like 3.5 years into that, Google was like, oh, like, or it wasn't Google, but a security vulnerability came out for it. Google labeled it low. And I'm like, I don't care how low it is. My phone is my life. Like, there should be 0 to no security vulnerabilities on it.
Ideally.
And yeah, ideally. And since it was like, it's our old phone, Google was like, we're just not going to patch that. You'd have to have physical access to the device and everything anyway. I'm like, yeah, but this is something I carry around. Like, please fix it.
This is something that has your bank, your email, your fucking personal private details on it.
Yeah, and they just weren't fixing it. I think eventually they did end up fixing it, but by that point in time, I'd already jumped on the iPhone train because I was complete Android before. And then that's when I was like, well, let me try iPhone. Let me see how their operating system goes. Because, like, that was one of the big downsides with Android. Like, don't get me wrong. It's a great operating system. It's a great set of phones. I think they still outsell iPhone.
Nah, not anymore.
Well, I mean, oh, okay. Well, so, I mean, it's one of those things, right, where it's just, they get left behind. Like, when you were buying, like when I bought my Samsung S3, it got like, I think it was like Kit Kat. And then after that, it was like security vulnerability fixes, and that's it. Like feature updates, nah, forget it. Hardware changes too much year to year for them to want to do that. And it wasn't until like recently that I think like Samsung actually started like bringing new Android versions to even their older phones that are within the lifespan. But the problem is like there still is that EOL, and I still have phones that I keep in my closet because I don't know. I don't know what else to do with them.
Yeah.
So every time I upgrade my phone, the old one just goes into the into the
The
closet,
pile of old phones.
into the tech closet. Yeah, like I still have like my old T-Mobile Sidekick.
Oh, those were great.
It was the yeah, well, mine was the smartphone version, and you could flip it up for the keyboard. What's funny is I plugged it in and turned on, and it like runs, but the problem is it's been left behind. But it still works. It still functions. But for some reason, we were just like, we can't support this anymore. Especially because like I think this phone was even before like 3G. I think it was just like 2G something.
Nice.
I don't even know if they called it 2G. But yeah, like, that cell network is gone. They've upgraded it. We're now on 4G LTE. Hell, my mother-in-law, or actually, I shouldn't say my mother-in-law. It was my brother-in-law. He had a phone through my mother-in-law's service because they had AT&T. He just took whatever was free at the time when he joined their service, because apparently like AT&T like hands out, like if it's under a certain amount, it's just free. I think it's like if it's like a $60 phone. But when they decided to shut down their 3G network, they had to like contact them and go, hey, you need to get a new phone. And it's like, but why? His is still working. You're just removing this old standard. Like, is there really no way that we could retrofit a phone to become 4G?
I mean, probably, but why would they? Money, my man. Money.
Yeah, but it's like, even to this day, I bet he could go plug in that phone. It would turn on. It would work, except for the software updates that are now going to be so far gone past it can't update anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So now you can't really sit with it on the internet because you and I both know, put anything outdated on the internet, and it's just going to get pwned instantly. It's going to become part of a botnet and a problem.
Actually, if it's old enough, it's no longer hacked. Do you know who Matt Casey is?
Except for his phone can't even get onto it at all.
Yeah.
Anyway, without Wi-Fi, because at least that standard still works. How do we update that standard and it still works?
Because it's an open spec. It's one of those things to where like that's an openly maintained spec, has to be backwards compatible, et cetera, et cetera. But no, do you know who Matt
Tell me
Casey
we can't
is?
do this with cell phone network
No, they
strategies?
won't, dude. Why would they?
See, this is the problem. Is like this also serves as like a way of serving their own self-interest, is because like AT&T called my mother-in-law and said, hey, this phone on your service, you need a new one. And so they got a cell phone sale out of that just because of planned obsolescence.
Yep. That is the world we live in, my man.
Yes. And I'm like, is there really no way we can try to get the self-interest of corporations to do better?
Why would they?
Exactly. But I'm like, there's got to be something.
I mean, that's like, I don't know. It's one of those things. There's like multiple arguments to this. So like there's the argument of government's job is to ultimately do what you're asking. Then there's the reality of the situation, which is that there's no real desire to. There's no money in it. People at the end of the day, we talk about this, they're still buying stuff. They're still giving them money. It's like it's like the college student that's like really evangelical about this and is sitting in their coffee shop on their MacBook and their iPhone in their pocket talking about consumerism and capitalism and how it's bad, while living in the world we do, buying everything annually, because I also remember being a high school student and getting some disposable income, and Moore's Law was in full swing back when you and I were growing up. So, legitimately, every new smartphone release was a big jump. So, you had to upgrade. But there's these young kids that do that today, even though Moore's Law at this point, from like a practical consumer perspective, is no longer in play. At least in my opinion. Like, I have not seen a significant jump in technology for probably what, dude? Last probably 7 years at this point. I feel like 7 years ago things kind of leveled off.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. Because, like, now, like, I don't necessarily feel the urge to go out and buy a new phone. My laptops, they are lasting longer. Like, I'm on an M2 MacBook Air now. But this was, even though I bought this laptop to now be, like, my personal, like, workish laptop, you know, for coding and whatnot. Like, I still have my previous laptop. I still play games on it. Because, like, the laptop I had before was a gaming laptop. It's still there. It's still up. It's still running.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily feel the need to upgrade it. Because it still is playing games fine.
Dude, 2012 MacBook. I can engineer on it. Does everything I need it to.
Yeah, you just had to install Linux on it. Like, see, like, that's the other thing, is, like, Linux is, like, the way to bring things back from the dead.
Yeah.
Like, I can't tell you how many laptops I've had in the past where, like, I was broke, but I just needed something to work, and I would get, like, a hand-me-down laptop or some other thing, and I would just throw Linux on it, and then all of a sudden, like, boom, everything's fine and dandy. It's still getting security patches as long as I'm using, you know, all the latest operating systems and other stuff like that. Like college, when I was taking notes in college, it was one of those things where I was like, well, I could write it or I could type it. I'm a much better typer than I am writing.
Yeah.
And my wife had like this old netbook
Oh no.
thing. It was an Intel Atom thing. And it, like, when you tried to boot that thing with like the Windows Atom whatnot, first of all, even when I turned it on then, it was already too far gone. It would not update. It would not really run. It was slow. And I mean slow. Where if I opened up Notepad and started trying to type in it, it was literally like I could type faster than it was processing it. So I would type out a whole sentence and then wait like 30 seconds later for it to catch up. Yeah. So I ended up installing Fedora on it. And, God, what was the Fedora release then? I can't remember. But I remember I installed Fedora on it, and all of a sudden, like, that thing was, like, I wouldn't say it was Speedy Gonzalez. It was not that.
It was not fast, but
I
it was
could
usable.
still type. Yes, I could still type, and it kept up with me.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't like one of those where, like, I typed it, and it just, like, fed a lot of characters into a queue.
God. That era of technology, like, it's fascinating to see how. Okay, I'm just gonna be honest. Those things were never good. That is like those netbooks were like the definition of fucking e-waste, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, but what's funny is I still have it.
Does it work?
It still is in my tech closet. It's still just sitting there, though. I can't say when the last time it actually got powered on. Like, that was maybe 2015.
You gotta get that thing out and like fire it up and see if it still runs.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'll make plans for that. Next time we meet up for a recording, I'll report back how that goes.
All right, man. Dope. Oh shit.
Though I might have to go with headless because everything these days now has like graphics processing. Because like you have like GNOME and KDE and all them, like they've become very graphics heavy. Well, I say graphics heavy, but it's one of those things where like more modern x86 processors can handle the hardware acceleration fine enough. Or if you have a graphics card, the hardware acceleration goes there. That's fine. Intel Atom is one of those things that is long since forgotten. So I guess I shouldn't expect for things to have been like made functional on it.
Is Lubuntu still a thing?
Last I heard, yes.
Oh, you have got to run this on it. Like,
Oh yeah. Except for now they're running the LXQT.
what the fuck
desktop
is
environment.
LXQT?
It's the I forget what the L stood for in Lubuntu. Complete operating system.
So they switched over to QT
Ubuntu.
from GTK. That's what it is. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can install it everywhere according to the Lubuntu website. It also, they do have Raspberry Pi and other SBCs available for download.
Nice. I have to say, you can be lightweight and not look like crap. Why do all these old, lightweight, window managing desktop environments always look like crap, dude?
It's just one of those things, right? Like, I wouldn't say they look like crap as much as it's just one of those things that you're trying to not use a lot of graphics processing because you're trying to be lightweight. You're trying not to use the memory. You're trying not to use the processing time. So it just inevitably ends up looking like crap, but it's
Spartan.
You know, it's one of those things that, like, I kind of wish that they did, like, kind of check your hardware and just kind of intelligently go, oh, well, we did find a graphics card. We could probably do some hardware acceleration. And, like, they start doing the hardware acceleration. But if they notice that, like, the frame rate is half of, like, what they expect it to be like, okay, never mind, turn that off. You know, just a little bit of intelligence.
Sample it for 30 seconds.
But
You're going to know in 30 seconds if it'll run.
Yeah, but it's one of those things where it's like, as a developer, I also know that everything I just said is like adding so much logic and so much complexity into it. And the whole thing is a desktop environment is already a super complex piece of technology. So me going, hey, you could just do this, it's not that simple.
You're trivializing a
both
much
know
more
that it's not that
complicated
simple.
thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. All right. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, people just clearly need to run Linux on everything. Stop buying new machines. You know, just become a security nut and someone who is way more passionate about technology. That's what everyone needs to do.
Yeah.
I was being facetious. There's no way in hell that'll happen. But
Yeah, no.
yeah.
But I mean, like, you're already making strides. Like, I've seen pictures of, like, your living room. Dude, you are bringing, like, retro gaming back from the dead.
Old tech, man.
Because, like, you have, like, a Dreamcast, an OG Xbox. I forget all the stuff you have. Like, do you have a PS2 in there yet?
Oh, yeah.
Or a PS1?
Oh, yeah. Both.
Okay, cool. He's already got those fucking hooked up, too.
No, I mean, like, as far as retro
Like,
gaming goes, that community's galvanized. But, like, bringing back the Saturn, Dreamcast, PS1, 2, 3, the fucking Genesis. You got the OG Xbox. There's, like, so many cool old systems that can be, like, used even in the modern day. Like, it's not even... it's one of those things to where like those consoles, those machines are cheap. There's a boatload of awesome software for them, and no one plays it anymore. And it's like, why? Why are we going to buy remasters of all this stuff that came out back in the 90s and early 2000s when you could just buy an old console, buy some old games for pennies, and just enjoy this experience that, like, you're going to pay $60 for on a new box that costs 3 times as much as this old box? I swear to you, the most fun I've had with my wife and kids recently was sitting down with a Sega Genesis, throwing a Mega Everdrive in it, and just playing a bunch of fucking ROM rips I had. And that console from 1989 in 2024 gave us hours of entertainment. And the PS1 has done the same thing. The Saturn has done the same thing. Hell, my eldest loves the Saturn to the point where he says it's his favorite console. And that thing is ancient.
Ooh, man, your son has like more chops than mine.
Dude, it's got the best version of all the Mega Man games. So like Mega Man 8 is like his jam, and the best versions on the Saturn. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not much into Mega Man, so it's hard to talk there. But I know I was trying to play some Sega Saturn games because you had brought them up. And I was like, these are rough.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm definitely a more modern day gamer than I am retro.
nothing wrong with that. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're just someone looking for a good time, like revisiting the old stuff and revitalizing that hardware and giving it new life, there's a lot of value there.
Yeah.
Have you played Panzer Dragoon yet, or is that what you were trying and it was like, nah, I'm out?
Panzer Dragoon. I no, that's not one of them. I haven't touched that one yet.
All right.
Because again, like the closest I made to, what do you call it? The closest I made it to actually playing Sega Saturn games, it was the Sega Collection on Steam, or the Sega Saturn Collection on Steam.
Okay.
And I don't recall if they have Panzer Dragoon there.
Probably not.
But I do see that on Steam they do have the Panzer Dragoon remake, and at time of recording we're in the Steam summer sale, and it's $2.50.
$2, you say?
Yeah, normally it's $24.99, but right now it's on sale. And actually, you could also get the House of the Dead remake as a bundle for $6.11 with the sale.
Okay, that's $2.50 I won't get back.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that they actually did remake these games.
I'm not, dude. Panzer Dragoon is like... Obviously, you didn't grow up with it. You're not a fan. It is like some of the most fucking awesome games, especially if you like rail shooters. Like, part of the reason I went out and got the OG Xbox, outside of my wife wanting it because she's a Halo nut, was getting to play Panzer Dragoon Orta. Like, that game is dope, especially if you're like a fan of the lore of Panzer Dragoon and you are a fan of just like rail shooters. Like, there's very few games that are better, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and pick it up because it's cheap enough, and also the House of the Dead is a pretty good one too.
Yeah. I mean, again, dude, it's a rail shooter, and like the remake looks fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, dope. Cool. Well, shit. I think we have beaten the horse dead on technological reclamation.
Right.
I guess, yeah. Let's let's talk about remote work for a little bit, and let's see where that takes us.
Oh, this is definitely a hot topic because what's funny is I was listening to a podcast today while I was driving around town doing some errands. I'm trying to find the exact episode number because it is a Coder Radio episode, and it's Coder Radio episode 575. We'll definitely. I'll send you a link so you can add it to the description.
Okay.
But like they were touching it. They were touching on it today, or well, the episode probably came out weeks ago. I'm just catching up. I was listening to it today, and like one of the things is like they referenced an article. I still haven't looked it up myself yet. Because like they have it in their description. I've been meaning to go click on it and give it a read through. But it's a lot of companies are coming out in an HR survey, and they actually posted up that like the return to office was a bit of a play to reduce numbers.
Oh yeah.
Of what do you call it? Employee numbers, because they were just had to cut slack, and what's the best way? You get people to quit.
Yep. No severance needed, no payouts, just goodbye. Which is honestly like a damn shame, because it's the company's own faults, and now everyone's being punished for mismanagement. But what can you do? What can you do?
What can you do indeed? But I mean, it's one of those things where it's like when we were in office, right? I remember going there every day and like going and sitting down, and my boss always was like, you know, every boss I had at the time was always kind of using that metric to know that I was working.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this much, like 20% of the time I was in office, I was working. The rest of the time would be meetings or me just like not up for that mood of like working, and would just be like sitting there on like YouTube or something.
I mean,
Like I can't say being in an office made me a productive individual.
I'm always like productive when I'm in an office, but the problem is I don't do any work outside of it, and there's a lot more distraction. So, I mean, prime example, we worked at Slick Deals together. That's a normal thing. Think of all the distraction that was in that office, Cody. There was alcohol, there was video games, there was foosball, there was employees coming up to each other, just talking, shooting the shit. Let's go for a walk. Let's go get lunch. Let's go fucking play around a ping pong. Whereas when I'm at home, I work. I just sit down and I work. And I write LBCs, and I write programs, and I do all this stuff. And I do it after hours just because I'm there. I've saved time. I know that this needs to get done, and I can either hurt myself tomorrow or just get it done today and not feel it. So in place of a commute where I'm burning an hour, I'm now just burning an extra hour getting work done for the company. But it looks worse to investors as well. Because it's like, oh, you're a company, but you don't have an office? What does that mean?
I can't speak on the behalf of investors, mostly because I've never actually dealt directly with investors. But I can definitely say going remote made me more productive. Though it was a forced hand because, COVID locked us down. And I remember going into work, it was like that Thursday, we had seen the email from our CEO, hey, we're shutting the doors. You have to get the VPN service up like now. Because our VPN service was there, but we had only ever used it for like a handful of people like a day.
Yeah.
Not 200 plus individuals. And being part of the SRE team at the time, it was like, hey, help the IT team get this set up and ready. because we need to be able to support mass amount of people VPNing into the office, because can't come to it, so we got to get your computer to it somehow.
Yeah.
Like that was a jarring moment, but it was as soon as like I started working remote, it took no time where I just started working and everything was fine. And like you said, like there's a lot of distractions when you're in an office, because it's like, hey, let's go for a walk or do this or that. Hey, you want to play around a foosball real quick?
Yeah.
Like there's so many distractions in an office, and you just don't realize it until like you're there or until it's gone, and then you're like, whoa. But I did end up running into a problem where I found that I was working all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I realized that's bad too.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, I'm going to recommend this to anyone who's working remote. Set alarms on your phone. Like an alarm for when you're supposed to go to work, an alarm for when you're supposed to be off work, an alarm for your lunch break. Because if you aren't doing those things and like reminding yourself, hey, it's after work hours. No, the work computer's off. You will just sit there and work. And it's work-life balance. It doesn't quite make sense. But you know, some days like I do adjust my hours accordingly, and I find that very flexible and very freeing, because it's one of those things where it's like, before when I was working in an office, I kind of just had to tell my team, hey, I got to disappear at like 2:00 for a doctor's appointment. And, you know, I might come back, but we'll see, because it depends how long the doctor's office takes. And I'm not going to sit in an office by myself like that. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, my security code never worked most of the time. So it'd be one of those things, even if I wanted to go back to the office. Like, I remember, like, during, like, when we were opening things up after COVID and, like, the office became available to us again, back when I did work at Slick Deals, I would just walk in, and then the alarm would go off, and then I would just ping the IT manager, it's me. So he would just remotely turn it off.
Yeah.
Because like I tried to type in my code, it was never right, and I was just like, screw it, I'll just ping him. But even then, it was like, you know, I only went to the office like a handful of times because like we were meeting up for lunch or something like that. But you know, again, going back to like the doctor's office thing, it was nowadays, like when I go to the doctor's office, instead of like missing that hour of work, like I'll come back and I'll do that hour of work, because I can easily work from my home office, you know, for an extra hour that day.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not necessarily something that like I'm, you know, I know the job will never love me back, but it's also one of those things where it's like, but if I do a good job, they're going to promote me.
Yeah. Well, and I think even beyond that, there's like a desire, at least in good employees, not everybody, but there's a desire to do what it is that you're saying you're going to do. Like if I'm telling you I'm going to get something done, I'll get it done just because it's an obligation. And admittedly, in my case, it's not exactly to the company that I care. It's to my boss, and it's to my partners in the other divisions of the company that need my support, because if they don't get it, work doesn't get done, the product doesn't get moved forward, and then nothing happens. And eventually the company goes tits up just because nothing's done, and then my paycheck's gone. And that affects me dearly, obviously, because I need that to support my family, much like you, and I think everyone else. So I think it's a little disingenuous for a lot of these companies to be basically forcing people back into office for what is ultimately narcissistic and fake means. I think it's telling that Dell recently did that, and 50% of the workforce basically told them to go fuck themselves. Literally, Dell said, you can stay remote, but we're freezing your career. And they still said, okay, I'll take no promotions, no adjustments, nothing. I'll just stay working from home. And if you don't like it, fire me. And for ones that it was come back or get fired, they chose to get fired, which is insane. Like, just think about how valuable having your own work schedule is and not being trapped in a commute is to people for them to freeze their careers or choose to terminate their career. It says a lot.
Yeah, but there's also like other things at this too, right? Like there was a lot of people, they moved to places that they could afford.
Yeah.
Because like I have a lot of friends that I met throughout my career that like moved from the San Francisco Bay Area because it was so expensive. And I've heard horror stories where it was like they were making like, you know, $200,000, $210,000, $220,000 a year, but yet they still had to have 5 roommates because if not, they couldn't live anywhere near where their job was.
Yep.
Because like their job would be in Mountain View or something else, and it's like the rent there would be just astronomical. Like they couldn't live there by themselves. But like here in Vegas, if you're making $200,000 a year, holy shit! Like the valley is your oyster.
Yeah.
Like there's not much that you can't afford.
I mean, I think it's that is a very deep conversation to have in regards to salary, how that applies to things, where people are at. Just because like that value is so fluctuative. And I think you can kind of see this. Like I was looking at statistics for the Vegas Valley and Clark County. Average home value is $400K. You go back to my hometown where I'm from, value is less than $100K. That's what it costs to have a home. And that level of discrepancy is on the low end. If you compare that to California, I think average home price in California is like 600 to 700, which is just bananas to me. It's like, how does anyone afford to live there? I don't know genuinely.
Is it though? Like that's the part where I'm like, that's like where you're like living out in the boonies again. Like, could you even commute to your office? Because I know like when I was just walking around in the Bay Area, just you know, because I was a tourist and I was hanging out there. Like there was homes I was looking at that I was like, there's no way in hell that's over $1 million, but it was.
Yep.
Like if you wanted to buy that home, it was like 1 point something $1 million, and I'm like, but it's 900 square foot.
Yeah. That is
Like how does that work?
That's what I don't know how people afford to live there, man. I don't. My heart goes out to them, but I don't know. I don't get it.
I mean, it's either you're an executive and you're making the buku bucks in Ken, or you have roommates. That's really the only way. Like you don't really have independence unless you're rich.
Yeah, which is unfortunate.
But then again, this is all speculation. I haven't lived there. I only did some research because like I was interviewing with a big company out there and I almost moved, and then I was like, well, to have like the same comparable lifestyle as I have here, I need to be making this much. And they didn't like that number. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not having roommates. So this is what I'm at. If you don't want to pay me that, then I'm sorry.
Totally fine. I just won't
It's just
move
not going to work out. Yeah, it didn't work out. But that was like back again where like being in office was like a thing.
Yeah.
Now, like when I left Slick Deals, you know, I went to go work over at ZeniMax, and I'm still there at ZeniMax, but I work from Vegas, and they are all over the place. They have offices all over, but like, you know, our big one is in Rockville, Maryland. And, you know, like that's where like my boss goes to work like every few days. But I work from Vegas because I'm a full-time remote employee. And it's one of those things that, again, like the flexibility is nice. And also for my company, technically, they're getting me at a steal because instead of paying those Rockville prices, because, my God, those salaries are also astronomical, they're getting me for, you know, less than 200.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that's... I think you're going to see a trend where, like, mega corporations like the Googles, the Apples, Dells, they're gonna push back into where people are going to be in the office. People are going to be miserable, but they'll do it because of the name. And I think you're going to see mid to smaller companies like where I'm at, where some of my friends are going. They're going to stay remote because it's a competitive edge. Like, would you rather go work for a megacorp and get the name, or would you rather work remote? And maybe you make a little less, but you don't have a commute. You don't have all the baggage associated with that. Obviously, there are people like you who have the unicorn. You know, you got both, but I think it's fair to say that that's not necessarily the norm, and I don't think that will ever be the norm. But I do think we'll see a renaissance of small, mid-sized companies going remote just to make talent acquisition easier. Because if I'm going into an office, I'm gonna want the big salary, and I'm gonna want the name, and I don't know. For me, I value different things, I guess.
Yeah. But I also I have to any startup that feels like they need an office, I have to ask that question. Why? Why do you think you need why do you think you need that? Okay, correction. I shouldn't say all startups cuz some startups may have a physical part where they need to be meeting up cuz maybe they're working on hardware or stuff like
Yeah.
that. It's kind of hard to have circuit boards go all over the world. It's better to have the prototype just all end up at one place. Okay, I can understand that. But if you are a software company, if you are a web engineering company, and you are just starting up, why do you feel like you need to put yourself in that lease when you could pocket that money and make your numbers bigger?
Oh yeah.
Because the thing is you're trying to get the investors to invest in you, right? Well, how do you get the investors to invest in you is have the bigger number than the other startup. Look, I'm already bringing in $1 million, but if your lease is costing you $200,000 a year, well, now you could say, okay, we're netting $800,000 instead of that nice round $1 million.
Yeah.
For the year.
Well, again, though, I think that's what it is, though. I think as far as the future of remote work goes, it's gonna be it's gonna be a nicety of a smaller company. I think the idea of mega corporations doing that is pretty well gone at this point, unfortunately. And I think it's going to depend on the culture of the startup as to whether or not it's something that they'll consider. But I think it's going to be much more common than it was.
Oh, for remote work?
Yeah. I think remote work is here to
for
stay.
sure.
It's just going to be in the lower tier companies.
I don't know. I don't necessarily much agree. I think there's going to be, especially in the bigger corporations, I think there's going to always be a mix. Because the thing is, they don't want to give up their giant office campuses because those do look impressive.
Yeah.
I've been to a Google campus. I've also seen a Microsoft campus. Though the Microsoft campus was from outside, I didn't actually get to go into anything. Because at the time, I didn't work for anything that was Microsoft owned or whatnot. So I was just there and saw it from the outside. But Google, I interviewed there. So, of course, they took me through their campus. They showed me a lot of stuff. It was very impressive. But it's also one of those things where it's okay, so I get why they don't want to give it up. But, startups, they're going to just be renting some, office space out of, one of those, co-working spaces. And that doesn't look impressive.
No.
So it's just you're just another run-of-the-mill company trying to have a space. And it's but when you're doing stuff as remote, you can also kind of pivot yourself and, be marketing yourself as, look, we are the future of technology. Mm-hmm. We are already ahead of the game. Look, we are remote.
Nah, I mean, you're right, dude. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting. I guess end of the day, it's not going nowhere, which I think is important. Yeah. But oh man, well shoot. All right. Looks like we're approaching an hour. Well, to the audience, thank you very much for listening. Do appreciate it. Again, this is Nerds MC. Cody, you got any final words?
Go play video games. They are excellent.
Go play old video games. They're excellent. Well, all right, y'all. Again, thank you for listening.